Welcome to Breaking Banks Africa. I'm Matteo Rizzi, and together with my co-host Nadine Doro, let us take you on a journey of entrepreneurship, innovation, and vibrant ecosystems Africa has to showcase. More than 1 in 4 people will be African by 2050, this continent being already the youngest of the planet. You can't miss these stories. This is Breaking Banks Africa. Let's roll.
Hey guys, welcome back to Breaking Banks Africa. I am Matteo Rizzi, the executive producer of the show. This is show number 14, and I'm here with my friend Dr. Stanley Jacobs, President of Fintech Nigeria and VP Western Africa for the Africa Fintech Network. Stanley, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you.
So let's start with the usual. You're clearly an ecosystem person. We saw each other in so many conferences. You are part of probably the poster child of the fintech ecosystems in Africa. Tell us a little bit about your story.
Wow. Okay. Thank you very much, Matthew. I feel so good to be on the show today, and it's nice to see you again. So for me, I think the Nigerian fintech space is one that I've played in over the decades. And when you look at it from a broader perspective, the banking, payment, and financial services landscape is one that I've been in for over 80 to 90% of my career, right? And I'm one of the very few privileged persons to have had the opportunity to work across different aspects of the ecosystem and gained experience. So I'm talking of gaining experience from banking, commercial banking, to microfinance banking, down to mobile money, where I was a pioneer chief operating officer to one of the first licensees of mobile money in Nigeria, and that was as far back as 2009. And then moving on into,
that's very early, 2009.
Yeah. So, moving on into fintech. I remember then when the licensing for fintechs, the PTSPs, and all these were put in place. We were part of this, the teams trying to set up institutions to get running on some of these things, right? Then from Brink Africa and a few other tech companies trying to do payment, both from a distribution perspective, and distribution now, I mean from a POS, point of transaction, ATM perspective, down to big tech. Also had my experiences in big tech, and then to fintech again, and now most recently having an ecosystem pivot into innovation and technology in the capital market space, a space I consider more complex when you compare to banking and payment, which is rather perceived to be direct. When you try to innovate or digitize solution, I think that the innovation, the investment banking space is more complex because of the nature of the product construct and how you have to put together algorithms to achieve very much more complicated outcomes. So for me, that opportunity to go around is one that I do not take for granted. And my presence in the industry, supporting different ecosystem initiatives, from regulatory engagement to policy initiative setting to talent development, even up to knowledge transfer, is a part of giving back to the ecosystem, and one that I'm very grateful for and look forward to greater times ahead. Thank you.
Amazing, amazing. So actually, this might be something that you don't know about me, and I'm happy that we are having this opportunity in the podcast to share our experiences directly. But Nigeria is very dear to my heart for two reasons. One, because this is where I've done my very first investment in Africa. So I was working for a media network, and we seeded Flutterwave, back into when GB was raising his very first money, and he called a bunch of super high profile investors asking for a small amount, which was very unusual, for such a large investors, but because of him and precedence, and pedigree, we decided, to fund it. And at the same time, back then I had a company called Fintech Stage, and we launched Fintech Stage Lagos. I believe it was 2016, and with Dr. Shagun, our common friend and brother, and that's how basically the whole adventure of the Africa Fintech Network started. So, and I believe that Nigeria, and Stanley, you will certainly witness it for us as well. In a decade, it's been 10 years ago, it evolved dramatically, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely, Matthew. The ecosystem has changed dramatically. In fact, when you say 10 years ago, sometimes I think that if you try to go back 15 years, you will almost not be able to compare what digital payments used to be then to what it is now, right? In fact, some of the terminologies we're using today were technically non-existent, right? At that point, you get more of electronic banking. That was the best you could get. We tried to evolve to electronic business as we continue to expand the ecosystem into asymmetric use cases. Then we moved into digital, then payments, then fintech. I'm not sure 15 years ago, we're using the terminology fintech as we are today. We're calling it something entirely different, and for me, that's something that's quite commendable, and it shows how we have evolved over the years.
So tell me something. I'm curious about what your take is on this. So Nigeria has been by far in the last decade the country and the ecosystem where most of the investment, whether it is a PE or VC investment, has been flowing. Okay, what are the consequences in the ecosystem of such an attention, from the VC? Because I think that on one hand, it became a very competitive market, great, but on the other hand, I see that I want to almost be provocative, right? Like investment not always went to good ideas, because when a single country gets so much of attention, unfortunately, they tend to be a bit more prone to, give capital, even to, copycats. I saw a lot of, for example, lending startups to receive money. They were competing to each other because market is so big, and some of them didn't have the same fortune, let's say. I'm curious what your take is.
Okay, thank you very much, Matthew. I think there's been a lot much talked about the VC and funding that we receive, not just in Nigeria, but also in Africa. Of course, we've seen Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya leading this space. And it's not by accident. Investors have their eligibility and due diligence checklist. And I don't think that in any case they have junked this checklist in dealing with Nigeria. What we have seen is that Nigeria has a consistently we've consistently led that space for venture capital funding, and this is triggered by a high demand for digital solution. I mean, check out our population. Even though we don't know, it's been a while since we had our last census. But of course, some people say we are even up to 250 million people. Some say 220, whatever it is, maybe above 200, right? But this shows that we have and out of these 200 plus million, 50% are youthful population. And this means that they are upwardly mobile. We have over 80% mobile penetration rate, one opportunity that we haven't seen in any country so far in Africa. And half of our population at the youthful bracket. Is not something you can take for granted when it comes to digital investment. So this demonstrates our high demand for digital solutions, and it shows that we have a very large market potential. Generally, you're an investor and you know that investors are drawn by the ability of startups to solve real world problems through technology, despite challenges such as currency volatility, which we have witnessed in the past few years. You know, I agree with you that some of the investment might have gone wrongly, which is what venture capital is all
Of
about.
course. Of
Yeah,
course.
we're taught in school it was 1 in 10, right? I did an executive course in venture capital and private equity, so it's supposed to be 1 in 10. It's just that what happens is there is so much noise from the ninth field, quote and unquote, over and above the one success that is supposed to cover for the other 9 failures, which is
Absolutely.
the physics or the mathematics of venture capital. Right. And I think if you want to look at the factors that lure VCs to Nigeria, we talked about the massive market potential. We've talked about the demography, or if you want to call it the demographic dividend. Our young tech savvy population speaks to it. So you're saying that we have a lot of opportunity for B2C and B2B. So merchants, e-commerce, cross-border e-commerce is a big thing here and worthy of investment. We also have a thriving tech and fintech ecosystem where we've seen what's happening with fintech leadership. Even at the Fintech Association of Nigeria, where we're setting some very strong pace in terms of guiding fintechs and helping them to get to where they should be, both in terms of compliance, operation, and running well, right? So we've seen fintech leadership come from Nigeria. We are now looking more like a hub for fintechs, standing side by side with Kenya and South Africa. And if you look at how we continue to dominate this space, despite the funding winter that we had recently, we still have Nigeria producing unicorns. Most recently, we've seen Money Point in Nigeria come up to be a unicorn. So this is quite, it's not something we can sweep under the carpet. Also, we have high growth sectors, right? And these high growth sectors, because most times we say investments coming into startup, what we forget is that the fintech ecosystem is very broad. It's not like banking. The fintech ecosystem cuts across life in itself, right? And
And
investors.
insurance, micro lending, there are plenty
Exactly.
of dimensions,
Exactly,
right?
Matthew. Exactly. Beyond fintechs, investors are heavily targeting agri-tech, logistics, health tech. In fact, we've seen logistics getting set to become unicorn. Renewable energy is the new thing. These are not just payments. These are lifestyle ecosystem, and they are showing very high potentials for returns. right? We've seen startup concentrations in Nigeria. We have over 3,000 startups, the highest in Africa, right? And so it makes it a must watch. So we have the highest population for investment. It's only natural that investors come here to scout amongst the many, right? We are solving problems. Then we also have a regulatory environment that is improved, right? We saw the Nigerian Startup Act came up a few years ago. We've seen last year, we got off the Financial Action Task Force Grey List, which is very good for us when it comes to our international financial reputation and also by extension increasing our investor confidence, right? We also have strong entrepreneurial talent and resiliency. Nigerian founders are known for adapting quickly to economic challenges, and this is something that investors view positively when they want to invest. We also have technical skills. So beyond even serving, while we are struggling with keeping talent here, I can tell you that most of the fintechs operating abroad, they have at least one or more skilled software developers, engineers, or innovators that are of Nigerian descent. And this is something that is looking more like a talent export opportunity for us, right? And I think wrapping it up, you've seen that there are also good exit opportunities in Nigeria. When you look at our unicorn profile, right? We've seen high-profile successes like Flutterwave, Andela, MoneyPoint, and this has also helped increase our visibility of the Nigerian startup ecosystem. It shows that we produce unicorns, and that shows our potential or propensity to produce more, even though we have seen that IPOs are limited, which is what most investors desire. Of course, but we are seeing now that there is an increase in secondary equity sales where larger investors buy out early stage investors, which is naturally how the ecosystem is designed to work. Thank you.
Absolutely. So I also love the fact that there is a very nice ripple effect in terms of talents when you have such a huge amount of unicorns concentrated in a single ecosystem. And we call them, there is a Revolut mafia, in a good way. So all these founders that are coming out from the unicorns and are setting up amazing companies. And actually, I wanted to focus a little bit on your work on the ecosystem. First of all, I'm fascinated by the fact that the Association of Fintech in Nigeria is probably one of the few that actually, I want to say, work well. Very simple. The challenge for all the associations is actually, becoming sustainable. Of course, to be able to give real help, to the local ecosystem and to the startups. And I think that Fintech Nigeria is actually, working extremely well. I'm curious about, my question is twofold. One is, what made you decide, to come and into the more of an ecosystem role? And second, what are the challenges, because you have two hats, right? So Africa Fintech Network, Pan-African, but also Fintech Nigeria, so local. So you have both, the challenges and opportunities to run a successful instance, but also to see the global picture.
Thank you so much. I think this is a very is one that is passion, but I would say dear to my heart. I think that's the way to put it. So I think that beyond the various talk shops that we have, what I always challenge professionals to do is to lend their professional hands to helping the ecosystem grow. Even before becoming the president of the Fintech Association of Nigeria, I have been very, very deeply involved in supporting the industry. As far back as over 10 years ago, I served in the committee of e-business industry heads. Then it used to be called the Committee of E-Banking Industry Heads and made up of top electronic banking, digital banking executives in banks. So that banking committee was more like the center point that engages the regulator, sets the pace, and ensure that what needs to be done in that electronic banking space is done. Like I said earlier, the fintech thing is very recent. Then we talk more of electronic banking, we talk more of electronic business, again. So I was in that committee, became a chairman in that committee, served as a vice chairman in that committee. I've been able to serve on so many regulatory committees for blockchain, for smart cities implementation in Nigeria, for the payment system vision that we talk about. And so just count them. It's all over, cutting across payments, cutting across insurance, cutting across investment and the securities and capital market space. And even when it comes to innovation, working with the Chartered Institute of Bankers, where I've worked with the governing council on capacity building for bankers, and having to set curriculum to certify bankers and all that. The Chartered Institute of Bankers is the premium and the highest body for the self-regulatory organization for bankers in Nigeria, one that I'm very proud of. I'm a fellow, by the way, of the Chartered Institute of Bankers. So these for me are all part of giving back. And it's not something that I will ever get tired of, right? So moving into Fintech Nigeria, of course, with the leadership of Dr. Segun Aino, OFR, who is the founding president of the Fintech Association of Nigeria and also the founding president of the African Fintech Network. He has set the pace. Everything we are doing today is riding on the foundation of what he has built. We cannot thank him enough as Nigerians. I think that the Nigerian ecosystem owes a lot to someone with so much energy, candle, and the power, strong way to make things happen. Just as you talked about the Africa Fintech Network and how it all started. So people like that have laid the foundation. They've given the mentorship. And it is only normal and rational that we follow. Otherwise, those things will fall off. So I'm very happy to follow. I'm very happy to take on that path. And I also have younger ones that are coming after me and I will take up this mantle and we also continue to give them the guidance. The mission is simple, right? There must be operator-regulator engagement. There must be regulator engagement, right? And there must be operator-customer engagement. There must be regulator-customer engagement. All these engagements needs a platform to happen, right? I'm aware that the market in itself is a platform, but at some point there needs to be that body that coordinates these interactions. Okay, we see sometimes when policies are released in the ecosystem, it's either the customer is happy and the operator is shouting, or the operator is happy and the customer is shocked, right? Yeah. When we have platforms like Fintech Association of Nigeria, there is a balancing, it becomes a balancing mechanism. It becomes a soundboard where people can share their views, where people can react to exposures of some of this framework before they even become policies in itself, right? So we are doing a lot around those interactions. We are doing a lot around socialization. We are doing a lot around policy and financial literacy. Most times we talk about financial inclusion in Nigeria and say, oh man, we have about 70% included financial inclusion. That's why we are not growing. That's why we are not growing. Our financial literacy is less than 40% in Nigeria.
Wow, I didn't know that.
It's far lower than financial inclusion. And that's a bigger issue, right? So you cannot get included in what you don't understand properly. And the responsibility is on all of us. to make it happen, right? So, and when we want to talk about financial literacy, it should be cutting across different aspects of financial services, not only payment. At some point, we have reduced financial service conversation down to payment, but we've seen here that the ecosystem is wider, is more complex than the traditional payment, savings, and withdrawal that we talk about. So we need to think of the customer from a holistic point of view, and that's where Fintech Nigeria comes in. And when you talk of the Africa Fintech Network, 48 countries, Fintech Nigeria, 600 institutions in Nigeria. But on the Africa Fintech Network, where you have 48 countries across the regions, North Africa, South Africa, East Africa, West Africa, you will see that the complexities continue to increase. As you're trying to bring the ecosystem together, the differences in how they operate begin to stare you in the face. I'll use West Africa, where I lead, for example. There is a strong need for integration, right? Especially when it comes to fintech and payment. On a lighter note, I used to say to my friends that it's easier to travel from Lagos to Cotonou in Benin Republic by road than to travel by flight.
Yeah.
It is also it is easier to send cash from Lagos to Cotonou by road than to transfer via digital payments.
Yeah.
Because when you look at the routes through which it is processed, right, for a country or a two cities just next to each other, you will see that the complexities are not just worth it, right? So this is where we come in, and that's why you're seeing a lot of strong initiatives coming from the Africa Fintech Network, like the Fintech license passporting, which Dr. Patrick Cote, the head of the Secretariat for Africa Fintech Network, is championing. And we were in Kigali a few days ago, Matthew, and you saw the MOU that was signed between Rwanda and Kenya now, right?
Yes.
Last year in 2025, we got the MOU signed between Rwanda and Ghana. So we are seeing countries take the lead, which is a step in the right direction. But I think where we want to go to as an ecosystem is a place where a fintech in Africa, operating out of Nigeria, South Africa, Ghana, anywhere, once you are licensed and you have gone through regulatory scrutiny, you shouldn't go about repeating the same thing again across Africa with other regulators. Let's harmonize the templates and let's make entry easier. The goal is one Africa, and one Africa for the African user. Thank you.
Also, no, thank you, Jacob. It's really enlightening with the way you are seeing and also the broad experience that you are sharing. You actually have a very interesting region, right? Because there are Nigeria leading, Ghana, sort of big country, great infrastructure, and also you have the whole Francophone Africa, right? Which is, per se is like 400 million people, right? And this is all. And as you mentioned, between Cotonou and Lagos is almost like a bridge between, the largest, let's say, English-speaking fintech community of the continent, bridging, the whole Francophone community that happens to have, by the way, a single currency. So there is so much work to do. And actually, I wanted to, you mentioned a couple of times, and I love it, capacity building and talent. And I want to close up or wrap up on something that is very close to my heart, which is, how do we make sure that the youngest population on Earth, which is the African one, in terms of average age, become the next cradle of talent for the digital capabilities, that not only financial services but the world needs. So you mentioned probably you work already with the universities, or you make sure that that there is this upskilling, from the academic world and the business world. How do you make it happen? What's your take on this?
Yeah, so for me, the first thing is the mobile phone remains a very intrusive tool when it comes to digital financial services, right? So, and to the extent to which we have the mobile coverage in Africa, we have seen that it becomes more and more easier to drive digitization or delivery of tech solutions, right? Um, Adoption of mobile phones now moving more into deeper adoption of smartphones across Africa is there. So naturally, we are seeing more of the digital natives emerging in the younger population. So I don't think that the real issue is getting them to adopt, because the younger people that are coming up today by default do not even want to talk traditional. If you
Yeah.
are traditional, you've lost them from the beginning of the conversation. They want everything to be digital end to end. They do not want to see anyone when they do their transactions. They don't want you to even know when they do their transaction. They don't want to speak to anyone when they have issues. They want to be able to interact with a chatbot or interact with an AI-enabled customer center. They're already doing these things on different social media apps. So it's a given, right? So for me, I want to take the conversation slightly to where we should focus on as practitioners, right? Because it's one thing, take Nigeria, for example. We might want to focus more on ensuring that every inch, every square meter in Nigeria, every part of our 774 local government is covered by broadband, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we continue to say that mobile phone penetration is very high, but that doesn't mean that there are areas that are not excluded, right?
Absolutely.
Do we ensure that the young people coming out of this area do not get disenfranchised, right? That they get included.
Yeah.
How do we ensure that we bridge the gap between the urban city experience and the rural experience? I usually say to my friends that, look, guys, if you are in Lagos today and you are having your phone and you see 5G, don't be the solution to think that that is what you see when you go to the rural areas.
Yeah.
Sometimes the network is poorer, is of lower quality. I am not an expert in the telco space, but I don't know why. It's a personal experience that I've seen.
Yeah.
And not to talk of areas where you cannot even have the network or broadband connectivity as a whole. Sometimes you even travel out of Lagos. The moment you go into another state, it's like it's like you are roaming, because the network quality slides down and you
Yeah.
begin to struggle until you get back. These are the experiences that we don't want the younger people to deal with. We want them to have the best in class experience, especially because some of them are schooling abroad, some of them are going to come back home. They're already experiencing better infrastructure performance. So when they come back home and the infrastructure struggles, it becomes a bit of a setback for them. That's one. Then, of course, the distribution. Number two, distribution. These financial services should be accessible, right? Beyond just having mobile, let it be accessible. It means that we need to take more and more of our product and solution online, because until a solution is digitized and online, it can't be accessible via the mobile, right? Number three is regulatory complexity needs to relax, right? For example, when you look at cross-border payments and some of these things, some of the restrictions that you have, sometimes either you can do, they tell you, oh, you can only do inbound, you cannot do outbound, you can do outbound, you cannot do inbound. We want it to be much more easier. I understand that there are microeconomic implications to these things, but I don't know the extent to which our young people understand it. So if we want them to really be part of a truly inclusive ecosystem, then we need to make things easier for them. Having the tool, people say, oh, young people, 50% mobile, it's not enough. It must be functional. It must be appealing to them before you can really see them adopt and become advocates of this, our solution. Thank you.
Stanley, amazing. Thank you so much. I feel like we could talk so much longer, and but I'm sure that we'll have more opportunities to feature our conversation in other episodes, and also physically, during the upcoming events. Stanley, thank you so much for being with us. I'm really grateful. I don't take it for granted. Thanks for giving your time.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you so much. It's really my pleasure having to do this with you. Thank you.
Okay, guys, that was episode 14 of Breaking Banks Africa, and this is a wrap.
Thanks for listening to Breaking Banks Africa, a Provoke Media podcast in cooperation with timepledge.org. Don't forget to share us out or shout out across social media. If there is something or someone you would like to hear on our cast, let us know. See you next month on Breaking Banks Africa.